Welcome to a board game review from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant.
And I'm Alexander.
Typically we do war games. That's kind of our signature element. But today we are playing a post-apocalyptic, futuristic version of a Euro-style board game. The game is called Fallen Land, a post-apocalyptic board game from Fallen Dominion Studios. The designers are John Longren and Sean Cahill, and they are friends. They live in Iowa. I lived in Iowa one time.
I did not.
Many years ago. Northwest Iowa. But this was a very interesting, it was a long game.
Yes.
And we are very slow typically, so we'll go into some of the details, but I think actually when I played forage cards or scavenge cards, I had to go around the house and find something that gave me a benefit. That's what took so long. No, that wasn't what we did, but
It's a long game in the sense that every time you do something, you're going to pull a card, and the card's going to give you activities to do, and there's a ton of story text on there.
Bunch
right?
of text.
And I love,
we love to read it.
A story-driven game.
Yeah.
Things like Dead of Winter, those crossroad cards with all the sweet text on those.
Yeah.
I like games Arkham Horror or Elder Sign.
Yeah.
They got the flavor text on them. I like to read those because that really brings out the theme in those games. That it's not just moving pieces around. And so it can feel quite slow. If you do a bunch of moves, you can end up pulling 3 or 4 of those on a turn, and that's a lot. That's a lot of. And
a turn can take somewhere between, if you read every shred of text and went through every element, I would say a turn is 12 to 15 minutes at a minimum.
At a minimum.
At a minimum.
But
I think once you get familiar with the game, you're going to speed up that.
But it's a lot of resolution. Bit. So that's really the only thing you have to know going into the game. Yeah. This game can be played solo. This is a full solo module. Or frankly, you could just play it. Honestly, you could just play it on your own, just having fun, doing the story, trying to get to X amount of victory points. Just play it till you get 20 prestige.
Yeah.
And I would enjoy that because there's no pressure in the sense of like, I'm going to get jumped by another player, but it's them enjoying the things that are happening to me. Can I get out of those things? Building my town, building my faction.
Well, and playing solo, and I haven't necessarily looked into the, what is it called, a Journey into Darkness expansion, which adds about 20% more cards, but it also adds 2 different types of solo variants. But you could play for like an hour. Yeah. And then go away and do something, come back, pick the game back up. That's what makes solo great sometimes, because it's very time flexible. You know, you don't have to sit down for 4 hours and play a board game. You can play a 4-hour board game over 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
But I think this definitely would be a good candidate for solo, and I would like to try the solo variant. We haven't done that yet. But yeah, once again, it advertises, I think, 1 hour per player. Correct?
Yeah, I'd say
it's more like an hour and a half.
If you didn't read any text and you knew the game, you could get it to 1 hour a player. But it's very backstabby and in your
very
face.
Very take that, yeah.
So I'm trying to build up my stuff, and then someone can come up with some bad cards, or you get some unlucky die rolls, and it can really set you back a couple turns. So
unlucky die rolls, you say?
Yeah.
What? What are you talking about?
There's a lot of randomness in this game.
We'll talk a little bit about that. I had 3 or 4 very punishing die rolls, and it was bad.
And there's some strategy in, what you're trying to do. Am I going to go and build up my resources? Am I going to go on missions?
Right.
Which of these scavenge equipment cards am I going to put on my guys to best bolster my chances? But a lot of it is pick a random card from the deck, make a random die roll to see what happens on an event chart, and a lot of the times this story is happening to you, and you have to be very reactive. So, if you're looking for something that's like, you have your fingers in all the pies, you don't necessarily have a lot of control over some of the things that happen to you.
Well, where you do have control, and I want to just make sure the wrong impression isn't given, these mission cards, they are based on skills. Each character that you have, and you have a party of 5 characters, has varying numbers in how many different skills? 1, 2, 3, 6 different areas of skills. And you can develop those skills, right? You add equipment, You attach different weapons and armor.
They can drive a car.
They can drive cars. In order to bolster those numbers, your goal ultimately is to make sure all your guys are good at everything. You also can develop technologies, which I thought were really cool.
Yeah, that was neat.
Where you buy those and they gain you automatic successes towards meeting the objectives on these cards. So that takes some of the randomness out. It's still die rolling. You're still going to roll some 10-sided dice, and then you're going to compare those to each character's result in those areas. So it is random in the fact that there's a dice roll, but you can mitigate some of that randomness.
And the effects are random and not equal. So I might have a card, I failed. I might lose 5 town health. Whereas you might lose and it's like your
Take
whole
2
party
wounds.
gets wiped.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, oh great, I'm back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful with that kind of thing and just know that going into it.
Right.
This is a game for fun.
Yeah. So along that same line, one of the things that I struggled with, I went after the resource strategy where I went out and tried to control various resource points around the map. I gained those. You got a card that just gave you one. Just like that.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, wow, I've just spent 3 rounds getting one. You got a card and it was like, oh, here, congratulations, have a resource point. I got over that. You said later you drew another card and you used that for a different purpose or something,
But
right?
it allows me to pull the card out of the deck that did that, so I could have done it
Could
again.
have done it again.
Which,
But then I got a condition that you placed on me. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
That required me to have a modifier added to my random kind of event roll
like
at the
town
beginning of the
events
game.
table.
And if you roll a modified 10, you're going to lose one of those resource points. So I was plus 3 or 4. So I rolled like 2 10s in a row, and I think out of 5 rolls, I rolled 3 modified 10s and lost 3 resources. So, man, that was devastating. I felt like I'd put a lot of time and effort. Although, I will say this, I think ultimately the game was very, very close. We were really neck and neck. So I think it ended up evening out in the end.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. Because you lost your whole party one time.
Yeah, that
which was
bad.
devastating.
But it was funny though.
It was because you rolled so bad.
But the story is funny, and that's
Right.
what makes it good, right? Like, yeah, my party got wiped and puts me back to the Stone Age, but it's because my party was trying to break into a military complex, and the story
so
is
funny.
that we were like fudging, trying to make plastic explosives with these chemicals we'd found.
Yep.
And I failed all my
failed
rolls,
and blew yourself
and the
up.
context is like, yep, your experiment fails, you all die in horrible like.
I think you
chemical
took
fusion.
8d6 worth of damage.
Yeah, it was like hilarious.
You rolled like 3 6s, 2 5s.
Yeah,
ended
it
up
was-
with like 35
It
damage.
was over.
So that was funny. So that is one element I would say. I think this is a real apocalyptic game.
Yeah, I play this and I feel like I'm like watching Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mad Max 2, Mad Max.
It's
Thunderdome.
difficult. There are a lot of punishing elements, a lot of take that. I drew a lot of cards that made you do bad things too.
Yes.
So I felt like this was truly an in-your-face, battle to the death, fight for survival apocalyptic
Yes.
game. Not this friendly, oh, let's work together and...
Yeah.
No, this was in your face.
Yeah. You
And I like that.
check your feelings at the door in
Yes.
this one.
I would say check your feelings at the door because you're going to have to hurt people.
Yes.
And that's just the way it is.
And if you don't, you will get hurt.
Yep.
And you'll then be like, well, I'm just going to hurt you in revenge.
Right.
And that's also why the game is much longer than it probably should be.
Right.
Is because you end up hurting each other so much that you really set each other back and you're
Right.
just adding a lot of extra time to the game doing that.
So an element you talked about, this prestige track, it takes 20 prestige to win the game. There were multiple times where I damaged you for like you lose 2 prestige.
Yeah, just a card that says lose 3 prestige. And
So-
that's hard to get, right?
And losing 3 prestige, in essence, does what?
In essence, that adds at least 1 turn on there. Where
Yeah.
if you could get to a mission space and successfully do a mission that gave you
Yep.
3 prestige, which is very rare, so it's at least an extra turn. You're just adding a turn onto the game doing that.
I would say it's adding at least 2 to 3 turns
Yes.
and sometimes 30 to 45 minutes. I didn't feel so much like that on the town health track.
No, less
So you
so.
can win either way. Although there were times where, we'd lose 2 or 3. It just didn't seem to be as damaging.
Yeah.
The Prestige was harder to get.
I think because it's a tighter track, it's harder to get
Yeah.
those. I think that really kind of stings. But that's part of the game, right? It's very in your face, very take that style game.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to play enough cards where you can mitigate that yourself. But to me, this game shines in the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what this game is supposed to be. There are so many cards over here, like unbelievable amount of
These
cards.
are stacks of cards.
And each of them is
Hundreds.
top to bottom text. And the stories are, some of it's really bleak. Some of it's got like a funny edge to
Some
it.
humor.
There's a
Yep.
lot of inside references and pop culture stuff to
Yep.
other post-apocalyptic things. And obviously there's a lot of IP stuff that they can't
Yeah,
infringe
they would
upon.
they
but
would change
do.
the name by one letter,
Yeah, like
which was cool.
One of the vehicles was I swear it wasn't the helicopter from Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
But it definitely
It looked like
was.
it.
and the guy, and I thought what definitely wasn't the Terminator.
Yeah, right.
That had like red eyes and was,
It was
a
a
cyborg
cyborg,
that stood in
yep.
the middle of the road.
So that was one thing. Back to the narrative. I did an interview with John Longren probably 6 or 8 months ago. He talked a lot about how their entire group participated in creating these backstories, creating the characters, creating the narrative, and the history of this world, this fallen United States. And you can tell. I'm telling you, it's well written. There, a couple minor errors here and there, but overall, very well written, very interesting. And as I read them, I was like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. And it kind of
there's good
brings you
theme
into
in those
it.
stories.
Yeah. So really well done, John and Sean and your group. If you like narrative games, you're going to love this. It is a little long. There is some randomness that you can mitigate. And there is a lot of take that. I think those are 3 of the elements you're going to need to remember when you play this game.
And I would love to play this with 4 or 5 people.
Oh, it would be great.
Because then you get this really cool interaction with everyone.
Yeah.
But boy, there's so much downtime, and that's going to make the game insanely long.
Yeah.
That's there's a choice there to make. Whereas normally I would play this solo because then I can do it at my own pace and enjoy the story myself.
If you had a 5 or 6 player game, it's going to be all day.
I think so, yeah.
It really is going to be
That's
all
an
day.
game.
And we all know we have those friends that don't read well, and
that's me.
and you have to read things over again, and then there is some discussion about the rules and how things. The rule book was a little, while the index I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
And the actual rules, I believe, were well written.
Typically.
They weren't necessarily structured well, meaning they weren't together. I don't know. What was your thought on that?
I'm used to reading like war game rules where it's like, I don't know, when you read a war game rule book and you read the next war game rule book, usually there's a lot of similarities in the way they're structured. Like, usually it's like movement, attack,
right,
supply stuff.
Yep.
and I'm just used to a different type of organization. So it was kind of hard to find some bits and pieces, and they weren't where I intuitively thought that they would be.
Right.
And that's my only real complaint. Though, is I'm like, the index is there, that's great, but as I'm reading the rules, I'm like, I'm reading rules on something. Oh, and here's the rules that explain why I've read those rules.
Right.
I just want it to be in a different order, maybe, but I couldn't explain to you how.
I think that's a nitpicking thing, but I think the rule book just needs a little more clarification and a little better organization.
Yeah, just navigating it was a bit tough at times.
One of my favorite parts of the game was the colored dice. Let me see if I've got all the...
Yes.
So you have 5 characters in your party, and there are 5 different colored dice. They are 10-siders, and each on the playmat, each of your characters is assigned a color. So for instance, the character on your left here is the red die, right? He's the orange, the green, the blue, which looks purple a little bit, and then yellow. But what you're going to do is you're going to roll those dice when you're doing your skill checks, and all of those rolls are made, and then you just compare the red character to the red die, the orange character to the orange die, and that really, I thought, worked out well. And I liked the graphic representation of that, the reminder that, hey, this is what they are.
It was a really neat way of doing that.
Yes.
Of saying, here's 6 characters, or 5 characters. You have to roll for each of them. but chuck them all at one time.
Yes.
I thought that was great. There was a couple times where I threw them, and I'd resolve one, and then I'd
Yep.
go to pick up the rest of them.
Yep.
Where I'm like, oop, nope,
Yeah, don't pick 'em
do
up.
that.
Yep.
It's just out of force of habit.
And by the end, we got pretty good. We generally knew what our character skills were, and if
Yeah.
we saw a lot of 8s and 9s, we almost automatically knew they failed those checks.
If you see a bunch of 1s and 2s,
You're gonna
like,
succeed.
great. You
Yep.
almost don't have to
Yeah.
calculate.
But if you see
anything, like,
7,
sweet.
8s, 9s,
That's
and
like,
10s,
okay, let's
you're
check it
most
out.
likely going to fail those. Only a few characters have 10s or higher.
But once you get 10 or higher, you then are resetting your dice value because you get
True.
the auto successes.
Yep.
Again, a cool system.
So talk about that, because I think that was really neat.
So your skills, there's 6 skills, and they have a printed value of 1 through 10, basically. And what you're doing is you're rolling a d10, and you're trying to get basically under that
Or
number,
equal or under.
and then you pass.
Yeah.
So what happens is after you start getting some equipment, you might have like a 15 attack rating.
I had as high as a 19 with that one guy.
Right. And so what
It's
happens
crazy.
is basically of that 15 rating, you kind of remove that first 10 increment
Mm-hmm.
and you say, I have an auto success.
So you automatically have one success, and most of these objectives needed
4 or 5 successes.
4 to 6.
Yeah. And then you roll a dice and you're trying to get under the remainder.
Yeah.
So the 5 left of that 15, you're trying to get a 5 or less to succeed, basically.
Yeah.
And what that meant is that when you started stacking and getting really good things, it's possible that you could have a guy with like, I think I had a dude with a flamethrower that was a 10, and then he had like some armor on. So he's got like a 21 attack rating.
Yeah.
He's got 2 auto successes, and then I have the option to chuck a dice, and if I get a 1, he generates 3
third
successes,
success, yeah.
and you're like, oh, sweet.
Yeah.
You can pass almost any check with just that one guy.
And then some of these town technologies factor into that. For instance, you didn't have the barracks.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
But the barracks, if you have that, you automatically gain 1 success. So you could potentially, with a guy that has a 21 attack and you had the barracks, you could almost complete that task with only rolling his dice if you got lucky.
And so that's nice. So you're trying to build these like super overpowered characters, but then you also, you can't just
wanna
put
spread
everything
them
in
out.
attack. Because
Yeah.
then, when you have to come home and do your medical check and you realize that
And you have a 3.
you're all idiots and no one knows how to
Yeah.
do surgery, you're like,
Yeah.
oh crud, you can't heal any damage on them.
Yeah.
So, and that's really cool as well. You have to find balance between your party and try to get in special abilities, and you can get those from equipment, or from the spoils cards.
Yep.
There's action cards. A lot of those are for screwing over other players, but some of
Yep.
them give yourself really cool abilities. And so that's nice. I enjoy that part of Euro games where you're
Yeah.
building up your own stuff,
Making
here's all
them
my cool bits
powerful.
and pieces,
Yep.
and then going out into the world and then seeing what happens to you.
Yeah.
That's really a lot of what the game is I'm trying to grow, and then I'm trying to not die at the same time as
Right.
well.
One other element that I liked, I enjoyed the movement system. So you would have a base movement from a 6-sider that you roll.
Roll
And then
and
you-
move.
Yeah. And then you were able to add some of your bonus moves that came from like horses or trucks or other elements. And I liked that because you could never really understand, I'm going to be able to move. I got to get 8 to get to that spot, but I may roll a 1
Yeah.
and only have 5 bonus moves and not be able to. So I liked that uncertainty. Terrain also affected it. Moving through a mountain hex took 3 movement points.
Yeah.
You wanted to stay away from mountain hexes, or you wanted to have the horses. The horses, every terrain becomes a 1 cost,
Yes.
which I thought was very powerful.
But then you get under the thing where you're like, I can move wherever I want. Well, a lot of the US in the map is
irradiated.
irradiated, so you've got to be careful where
Yeah.
you move because you start taking radiation damage just from walking through it, and
Yep.
no one wants that.
And the cool thing about the irradiated areas, some of them you can see it's just 1 hex, but here's a great example. This covers 4 hexes. So you can't get around that. You're going to go through there, and when you go into an irradiated hex, you automatically take 1 damage, and if you stick around or fail the check, you can take more.
And you have to start picking up the radiation cards, and
Yeah.
usually those are very bad, not good.
So lots of neat elements with the movement. I thought the map looked great.
Yep.
It's a little, if you're not used to hexagons, it looks a little different, but we play war games that
Yeah.
uses hexes. But I thought well made. I thought the
Yes.
tokens were great. The dice were nice. Thought the map was really well done. The art is a very specific style, but I think it works for the game. Overall, I think a very nice looking game that plays very, very well. So what was your favorite part of the game, Alexander?
The cards.
The cards.
I love the stories of the game. Like, some of them were so cool. Because, you could pull it and just say, okay, I need to make these checks.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the stories are what make that check important and what means something to you. So, I had one where it was stumbled into a town, and there was like a C-130 crashed into a building. So I had to scale the building and open up the C-130 to find what was inside. And if you fail, it's falling off the building and taking a bunch of damage. Or if you succeed, you open up and there's a bunch of military equipment inside. The cool stuff. And you had one where it was like you stumble up like it's this grand race. And you had to do a race, so you have to bring in your car, and you have a driver, and it's doing this cool stuff.
Yep, that was a very fun one.
And you had one where it was you had two of your guys were having a fight.
Oh yeah, it was hilarious.
It was,
and I had to talk them down using my diplomacy skill.
Like, you're driving down a road, so you roll a dice to pick who's the driver and who's the navigator
randomly. Yep.
And then it's like, and they're basically punching each other. And if you don't succeed, then they both take damage.
Yep.
And then you have to roll mechanics to see if they crash the car. And if you fail that, like, your whole party wipes, basically.
Yeah.
You take an ungodly amount of damage and your vehicle gets destroyed. Just like, it could just be, oh, this is a series of dice rolls I gotta make. But the text makes the story so rich and so post-apocalyptic and fun.
One that I really liked that I actually skipped. I used my ability to skip it. So one of my, I think it was a planes encounter, I drew it and it said, I found, in essence, an ICBM silo, right?
It was just like a nuclear warhead lying in a field.
So it's laying there, and I'm like, if you run up and do it, and it's a very hard check, and you fail, you could blow up your entire party, and if it was in a certain amount of hexes of your home village, it was going to be destroyed. So I'm like, yeah, I'll pass on that. I used an ability to get rid of that. Looking back on it, I wish I would have done it, because you know what, it would have been really cool.
It would have been funny.
Would have been very story narrative driven. I think my favorite part of the game was I liked how you can actually try to win this game several different ways.
Yes.
You could go for the resource points. You can try to build your town health, or you could just do mission after mission after mission, hoping to gain prestige from that, developing your technology. I just like that there were 3 or 4 different ways. You can do PvP combat. I can go in and raid your resource areas. You can raid mine. The one cool thing is we bought these town defenses that would have, had I gone in there and tried to take yours when you had 5, I was going to take 5 damage immediately.
You take 5 auto wounds that can't be protected with armor, because my guy's fighting back.
So there was a lot of disincentive to try to do that. I liked that. This felt very apocalyptic. It was, I actually thought it felt hopeful, though. And I know that's a weird comment. I felt like, I'm building something and I hope I can do well. And then you find a card that just devastates you. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, but I'm going to do better and I'm going to get back to it. I like that. It kept me engaged. Listening to the narrative kept me engaged. And just kind of thinking, what's going to happen next, I thought was very cool. I really enjoyed this game. I would say if you like longer, Euro-based, story-based games, another game that we kind of compared this to, but it's totally different, is Firefly. We love Firefly because you're going around. Now, there's not as much narrative. There is a little bit because you misbehave and you get...
Yeah, but that's one where I'm kind of doing my thing, moving around, trying to complete my missions, and do my thing. And
but you can do some take that stuff in that game too. So it felt like that really different functional element. But I really liked this. So I'd give this 2 thumbs up. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I had a blast playing this. For me, this is actually probably a solitaire game, is how I would play this in the future, just because of the length of the game.
Right.
But I'm like, this is a great solo game for sure.
Yeah.
The story it's
fantastic,
dripping with theme.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I want from a solo game. But being able to build up, there's something tangible here. This is my guys. I'm getting all this equipment, I'm building my technologies and stuff. I feel like I'm like really doing something in this game as well.
So great game. We actually did an unboxing video. It's on our YouTube channel. I did an interview with the designer, John Longren. This is our video review for the game. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you give this game a chance. Once again, Fallen Land, a post-apocalyptic board game from Fallen Dominion Studios, designed by John Longren and Sean Cahill. I recommend you go ahead and check this out. So I've been Grant for the Player's Aid.
And I've been Alexander.
Thanks for watching.